Just like all other art forms, for as long as animation has been around, there has been a harsh divide between good and bad animation. In the vocabulary of many, good animation has been the primary catch-all for complementing a work's visual appearance. But in recent months, notable figures such as Digibro, the Canapa Effect, and Mother's Basement have harshly criticized this practice. Instead, they suggest more specific categories, including art and flow, to go along with this more broad title of animation. This video isn't to defend or argue that idea, though I do support it, but specifically to discuss the technicalities of animation and to call into question whether it really matters quite so much as we really think. I'm going to be upfront here and say that this argument may come off as casual. While I respect them, I don't necessarily agree with several of the analytical perspectives in this matter, and instead favor a simpler approach. Rest assured that I have put a lot of thought into this matter and decided that, in this case, initial judgments are often true. I've always stood by the philosophy that the thought process and reasons behind an opinion are vastly more important than that opinion itself. As made evident, the term animation has many connotations, so before we can get into any meaningful discussions, I'd first like to lay out what I will be defining as animation. When I talk about it, I inherently think of the fluidity of motion. Therefore, the best animation is simply the one that looks most fluid with the highest number of unique frames per second without looking jarring. The better animation will often have more dynamic poses, expressive faces, and do a better job at the communication of movement. Later on, it'll also be important for me to define art, so I'll do it now. Obviously, art is a huge, sweeping concept, but in the context of this video, the best way for me to describe it is how visually pretty a still frame is. This incorporates a large number of sub-items like character design, color, background design, and so on. Essentially, art is the still frame of everything on screen. For our first examination of this argument, let's begin with taking a look at the current season of the Pokemon anime, Pokemon Sun and Moon. As a surprise to no one, when the designs were released, the internet flipped out, saying that Studio OLM had given up on animating or that they had lost budget. I'm leading by saying that I understand that this is not at all the case. On a technical level, Pokemon Sun and Moon is excellent animation with hugely expressive character and dynamic poses. This entire section can sort of be taken as a response to the Canapa Effects video, link in the description because YouTube doesn't want to give me annotations anymore. In the video, Canapa goes over why these redesigns are so great and why they lent themselves to better animation, and while I can see his point, I don't agree that that necessarily makes them better. The new designs may have tons of personality and can occasionally be more interesting, but I think that overall they aren't as nice to look at. Animation can't be judged by the in-between frames, but when the character is never on model, or moving more than the situation calls for, it can just look weird. In fun action scenes like Ash riding the Sharpedo, it can look fun and exciting, but even with these cool dynamic shots, Ash looks janky multiple times in just the span of a few seconds. The issue here isn't Ash going off model or occasionally moving unrealistically. Studio Trigger shows that that can be amazing to watch. The issue is that Ash's design is just simply unappealing. Simple designs can be fine, but this childish and somewhat sketchy presentation absolutely ruins it. For a look at zany off-model animation done with good designs, take a look at the second Little Witch Academia OVA. Here, all characters are clearly designed for animation. They have very simple presentations with one or two memorable features, but otherwise fairly simple costumes. The same can be said about other studio productions like Kill la Kill or Space Patrol Luluco, but that's beyond the point. In this breathtaking cut, key animator Yumi Ikeda fashions an incredible dance sequence in a way that's very easy to follow, and even easier to be enthralled in. Amanda's flips and tricks have a real sense of weight, and watching them has a real sense of tension, just like watching a real gymnast. Her movements are explosively dynamic and occasionally off-model, just like the cut of Ash on a Sharpedo, but her clean design sets this cut leagues above. This shows that by no means is animation unimportant. Animation can be the make or break factor in increasing the memorability of a show, but when that beautiful animation is used on less than beautiful characters, it's just a waste. Just think about the counterexample Canapa brought up in his own video on Pokemon X, Y, and Z. He claimed that these more complex designs would be harder to animate and less willing to be pulled off model. And that's probably true. Canepa has a way deeper knowledge of animation than I do. My issue is that even without this expressive animation, Kalos Ash looks way better than Alola Ash. I don't understand how people can value technical impressiveness over impact. Now I'd like to bring up a somewhat touchy subject. Most people can agree that Yuri on Ice didn't deserve to win the Animation Award in this year's Crunchyroll Awards. I get that it was the one title that many voters recognized, and that there are plenty of reasons why Yuri on Ice swept the awards, but right now I want to discuss specifically what grabbed hold of the animation voters. The first few episodes had absolutely stellar animation and overall visual design, and no one is going to try to take that. But in the latter half especially, that same animation stuttered and at times completely collapsed. Why then were so many people so enthralled by the visuals? Despite occasionally lackluster animation, the majority of still or otherwise less dynamic frames were still stunning to look at. People latch onto these stunning still frames and value them over any lazy split-second animation. This, I think, speaks volumes. When it comes to the presentation of a show, it's the art that is more important than the animation itself. Crappy motion or in-betweens can be covered up by lasting art. For further example, just look at the film Kotonoha no Niwa. It has very few dynamic scenes, and most scenes are really just people talking. But the stellar artwork, especially in the backgrounds, make it debatably the most beautiful animated film of all time. That above all else is why I remember it. What was it even about? Shoes? I don't know. I just remember those awesome rain sequences. I think what this all boils down to is that it's easy to get wrapped up in the technical impressiveness of something. Good animation probably does take more effort and time than, to use Digi's phrase, 5 screensavers per second style. The problem with getting stuck in that technicality is that we forget that what we're looking at is, in the end, art with the goal of being aesthetically appealing, and impressiveness does not necessarily equate to beauty. I don't want to end this video by saying that beauty is subjective, that'd be a cop-out. But what I do want to say is that when it comes to beauty, your gut instinct is probably right. Hey guys, thanks a lot for watching this week's video. It's been a point that was sort of bubbling under the surface for a long time, so it's nice to finally get it out there on the internet. I wanted to apologize for the delay of this week's video. I just finished up finals week, so between studying and actually taking finals, I haven't had a lot of free time recently, but that's whatever. Also, this is the first really analytical video I've made with my new microphone, so let me know if you can sense that audio quality at all. I think it's better, at least. If you want to help support me, you can do so over on patreon.com/Senpizzle. Any support you can provide would be hugely appreciated. And if you want to follow what's going on, you can do so over on twitter.com/Senpizzle or with my handle @Senpizzle. So thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.